Welcome to Entrepreneur S.O.S. with your hosts Monique Mull and Sandy Calling. We help business owners navigate the often complex world of entrepreneurship. Each week, we share expert advice or real-life experiences from successful entrepreneurs who have faced and overcome the challenges of building a business. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, this podcast is designed to help you. So join us each week and let's grow your business together. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us reach more entrepreneurs just like you. And today we are talking with Bek, who is an audio engineer and a podcast editor. She has worked for several groups of people, from fledgling podcasters to academic departments. She's learned audio from some of the radio heroes, including the Peabody award-winning NPR show and the podcast On Being with Krista Tippet and transform.org. She's also a senior trainer for the Hindenburg. And today, she is going to help you cut through the BS of how to start a podcast from an expert's point of view. And let me tell you, there's a lot of BS out there floating around. So welcome back. We are so honored to have someone of your expertise on our show to really share the goods on podcasting and what it looks like to start a podcast.
Welcome from me back too. And I wanted to thank you because I know I'm going to learn a lot as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So let's just jump in and start with, there are so many influencers out there bringing how to start a podcast, when really, I think what they're really doing is just telling people lies that they feel like they need to market this and buy this fancy equipment and do all these things. And for a lot of people, I think it's overwhelming.
Yes, I would agree. The biggest things that I've learned in teaching on social media specifically is that people are so overwhelmed and they don't know who to believe and where to start.
When Sandy and I started, we were a little bit techie, so had a little bit of an advantage over other people. Like, we understood some things about computers and audio and editing, and there's just a lot of tools out there. What are some best practices when an entrepreneur is starting a podcast? Where would you start someone from stage zero?
Okay. The first thing you're going to need is a microphone. And just off the bat, I'm going to tell you, don't get a Blue Yeti. If you have one, sell it.
That is the influencer microphone. I am going to say that out loud. It is totally.
It is. I'm going to be honest. Audio engineers are just dicks about that microphone. Like, they really are. They will judge you and not take you seriously. I understand that for whatever reason, that microphone has become hugely popular. In fact, yesterday I went to Amazon and I put in podcast mic just to see. And sure enough, it's like Amazon bestseller, 4 stars. One of the things that gives me the sweats as an audio engineer is when somebody says to me, well, I have a microphone. And I'm like, no. And they're like, I got it on Amazon. It has 4 stars. No, let's time out. Let's go back. First of all, just really quickly, if you have a Blue Yeti, it's not your fault. Like, you didn't know, right? I don't want to shit on anybody. Like, I'm here to teach and be gentle about that. So I'm not one of those audio engineers that's a dick about it. I understand there's so much misinformation. So if you have it, maybe learn how to use it, watch videos. It's a complicated microphone. Also, it's a condenser microphone, which you don't want to use if you're a podcaster or live streamer. I've got videos on that if you want to understand more about that, but maybe try to sell it. Same thing with those blue snowball microphones. So the first thing you're going to need is a microphone. Get a dynamic microphone, and that all 3 of us are using dynamic microphones. Now, Sandy and Monique are using the microphone that I recommend for an excellent budget microphone. Engineers love this microphone. It is $50 for the silver version, $80 for the sexy black version. It's up to you. They sound great. I have been preaching about this microphone for a long time. It's great. More people are learning about that. It's an option. So when people say to me, it's expensive to get good audio, I say absolutely not. $50 microphone.
Exactly.
So, and this is USB and or XLR. So that just means you can plug it directly into your computer if you don't want to have an interface. And an interface, is just people are asking me like, what's an interface? An interface is something like this, which is what you plug your microphone into, and then you plug this into your computer to have a lot more flexibility, a lot more options. But you don't need that if you don't want it, right? The cool thing about this microphone and another USB/XLR microphone that I recommend is, so if you do grow and you do stick with this and you want to get an interface someday, you can do that. So I've got mic recommendations on my website for $50 through the SM7B, which is that microphone that everybody on the planet uses. Think about every single YouTuber that's got that black microphone, that's on there too. So quality microphone is number one. And number two is mic technique. Now, a huge question that I get, a regular question I get, I will have people get me on one-on-one and be like, basically the whole reason why they hire me is because they've got a great microphone and they still don't sound great. So here is what they're typically doing. They've got a microphone like mine, and then they're recording and they're back here. And like, you can still hear, right? But then only thing I'll do is I'll say, can you move closer to your microphone? And then all of a sudden they sound like this. So we're on video. So I'm not going to sit and eat my microphone like some people do, especially like the broadcasters will want their voice to sound deep and warm and sexy, right?
Hello.
But when I record by myself, I absolutely am like up like this. First thing, if you don't have a well-treated room, really, who does? Get closer to your microphone. The general rule is about a fist away.
Can I ask a question on that?
Absolutely.
So around the well-treated room.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are doing this just in our like spare bedroom or our office. Is there anything that you can suggest that will help with noise condension? Like, I know you have those pads up in the background. If you're watching us on YouTube, she has some sound pads. We're not all going to have that. So is there certain things we can put in the room or do to help with that echo or sound?
Yes, and great question. You don't have to have a perfectly treated room. This is why we use dynamic microphones versus condensers, because basically what's happening here with my microphone is it's picking up whatever I point it at. So like when I tap on my desk, you're not going to hear that as much because it's focused where I point it. Now with the Blue Yeti, it's picking up everything, right? It's picking up your dog snoring. It's picking up your window noise. It's picking up all your reflections from all of your monitors, your flat desk. Okay. Dynamic microphone will help with so much of that. The second thing you can do is get a rug or carpet, or that's huge. Put a bookshelf in the room that you're in. Anything that will stop. There you go. See? Anything that will prevent all of the reflections. And that just means you're already going to get them from your monitors, from your flat desk. Now, when I'm recording by myself, like for just like voice stuff, not only do I get closer to the mic, I will throw a hoodie down on my desk just because it will get rid of that reflection. So think about if you're in a bathroom. We all know how that sounds, like loud, or a gym. That happens on a much smaller scale in a lot of rooms. So the first thing I would recommend, like rug, carpet, bookshelves, anything to absorb the sound.
I once saw a video of Alex Hormozy recording his book, and you know what he was doing? He had pillows on each side of his face and his microphone in front of him, and then something on top. And he was in this like little man cave. And I'm like, that's brilliant, because I just needed the sound to be reflected and just directed to my voice. He didn't go into a fancy studio.
Yeah.
If that guy can do it with his computer and a couple of pillows for his book, this is like let's not overcomplicate it.
Yes. And on that note, a lot of people, it's not really as a thing like it used to be, but people used to record in their closets. Like,
I was just going to say, I read that somewhere that they went in the closet.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the clothes.
Now, so. Yeah. Small room with a door, lots of clothes. And then people will record on the ground and then bring in like a little light. You don't have to do that because listen, we're all on video too, right? Okay. So now where am I? Mic technique. All right. Room tone. That was a great question. Thank you for asking that. Now, mic technique is just as important as the mic you choose. So not only getting closer, but this is so big. I want people to try to remember this too. I see people who are really in the business who forget this. So it's a common thing that people forget. Now, plosives are those pee popping sounds. Okay. So right now, my mic, for those of you that can't see, it's pointed at the corner of my mouth. This is called off axis. I'm doing this because when I say, please bring pizza pronto, it sounds fine. If now I'm going to move the microphone in front of my mouth called on axis, and I'm going to say the same sentence, please bring pizza pronto. And you can hear the difference. Please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. A, it just sounds less professional when you have those P-pops. B, it's fatiguing to the ear. Whether or not the listener understands that or is even consciously aware of it, you just want to have the air move past the microphone like it's doing now. That's why you point it at the corner of your mouth. That will also help with sibilance, which is those harsh S's you hear, like that sort of helps to tamp that down as well. So fist away, keep the microphone a fist away from your mouth, point it at the side of your mouth so the air moves past it, and so the sibilance is less.
I want to make a note as she's saying this. Sandy and I are adjusting everything. Just going to say that out loud.
That's great. We're here to learn. Yeah, no judgment.
I mean, that's why we brought you on. We're definitely not the experts. You are the expert. Okay, so we have mic technique, we have mic, we have room. We've covered that. Yeah. What would be the next thing that you think a lot of people are like, I don't know how to do this?
So next is recording. Now, if you're doing a video podcast, I recommend recording on something like Riverside.fm or Squadcast. Here's why. Because Zoom doesn't record everybody locally. So Riverside, for example, and listen, I pay for both Zoom and Riverside. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. With Riverside, everybody's tracks are being recorded locally on each computer. So let's say we're on Riverside right now. My internet is taking care of my side of the audio and yours is taking care of yours. So as soon as you hit end for this podcast episode, it will then upload from your internet, your track from your internet, my track from my internet. So it avoids those glitchy sounds that you hear in Zoom a lot. And it's just got some other features that are great for podcasting. But in terms of just the audio quality, I recommend Riverside or Squadcast.
So in Riverside or Squadcast, are you editing within the app?
No.
Okay.
No, but what they do have is a feature for taking some of your clips for social media. So you can do like quick edits where it's just, I want this section to go to Instagram. I want this section to go to TikTok. You can do that. But where I edit, and this brings us to part 2, is Hindenburg is now, disclaimer, I work for Hindenburg. They are a Danish audio company and they are the digital audio workstation that I use. So if you're not familiar, think of Photoshop or whatever. It's the audio equivalent of that. But the reason why I really recommend Hindenburg and have been using them for years before I started working there is it is designed and made for podcasters, journalists, and radio people. So narrative audio podcasters. It is also designed for people who are not tech savvy. It was originally made for people who didn't, in developing countries who had never seen computers but wanted to tell their stories. So that said, it's made by a journalist who is also an audio engineer. So what he did was made everything just as powerful and just as great sounding with a few buttons and a few knobs. So there's no 17 settings on a compressor. And for equalization, it's on or off. And they have done an excellent job of making it easy. And I will say, as an audio engineer myself, I had a terrible time in school for audio production and engineering because the engineering side was so hard for me. I now know I have dyscalculia, which is a math like learning disability. It turns out that translates over into engineering as well. So when I found Hindenburg, even me who was trained, I was like, thank God this exists. You can do all of your editing there and you can publish right from there to your podcasting platforms.
Can you do video or is it just audio?
You can't record video. Let's say you record in Riverside or in Zoom. You can throw that video onto a video track and see the video. This just is coming out. By the time this airs, Hindenburg 2.0 will be out. It's coming out today though. So this feature is now available. It also transcription is there today, a bunch of other features too. So you can throw your video in there, see it, and do the audio part of it, but you can't do video editing.
But you can change the editing. So if we were to take this Zoom and put it up on the track, it'll transcribe it, and then you can edit the audio from the transcription, or do you have to edit it from the audio track?
It won't edit the video. You can throw it in there for your audio only.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've been using Descript.
Yeah.
And I was curious to ask you a question around recording in Descript because they do have a recording piece and they're using Adobe Stereo Premiere Sound or something. And we weren't sure about that. Have you ever heard anybody using Descript, or is that not really something that you suggest for a podcast?
I know a lot of people that use Descript. I've tried to learn it so many times and I just hated it, honestly. But that said, it's a really great and powerful program because you can do video transcription and edit. My brain doesn't work that way. And so I just found it so difficult. But I do know a lot of people that use it. So I'm not an expert on Descript, but I know that people use it and a lot of people do complain about it just because it's so different. But some people like that too.
What about platforms, like hosting platforms for your podcast? There's so many out there.
Right.
Is there one that you recommend over another, and why?
That is something that I really try not to recommend because it's so person specific. I don't know what your personal needs are. There are so many out there now. I know that's a bummer answer. Everybody needs something different. And I will say any of the big ones are fine. There's 15, 20 that are going to be just fine for you.
One of the things I was going to ask is, what do you think is one of the biggest lies that you're seeing float around podcasting from influencers and gurus, besides the Blue Yeti lie, which we all know is prevalent?
I don't know if this is so much a lie, but I think one of the biggest things that I would love people to understand is that podcasting is a shit ton of work. And pod fade is real. Pod fade means you start a podcast and you don't finish it. You don't complete a lot of episodes, or you quit early. You get overwhelmed. Most people don't make it past 7 episodes. And 74%, I know, good job, y'all.
This is number 18. Woo, woo.
Yeah.
Great. See? And
Weekly.
You're killing it.
Pod fade. I love that.
Pod fade. And 74% of podcasters quit within the first year.
Wow. And you do think that's because they try to make it too perfect? Like, we don't edit everything out. We have the ability to get rid of some filler words and things like that. But we keep some things in. We trim it down. If it's a little lengthy, we'll remove things. Okay, this one a little long. Let's just get rid of this section. But we typically try to keep it as like real. I feel like a lot of these podcasts just feel so scripted. I think that's why everybody loves Joe Rogan in a way, even though he's a weirdo in so many ways. He's just so damn authentic and real and asks the most bold questions of people. You're just going to get what you're going to get.
I think there are a lot of reasons why pod fade exists. I think my personal take on that is the amount of work. I always tell people, set aside, if you have a very basic show, like one guest, one host, no sound design, set aside 10 hours a week. This is like starting a part-time job. People don't think about like show notes, marketing, ID3 tags, all of these things that aren't fun to talk about for some of us.
What's an ID3 tag? We don't know what that is.
Oh, just the tags that you put on your episode, things that will populate in Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever.
Okay. So like the metadata.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Metadata. All these little details people don't really think about. Also, the audio editing is a lot of work, can be a lot of work. That's the number one thing I would delegate, if you can, is hire an audio editor. But to your point about keeping it authentic, one of the biggest mistakes I see new podcast editors make and new podcasters make is over editing their shows. Now, the pace and cadence is so important, and you guys are good at that. It's a dead giveaway to me when somebody's new at podcasting, when they take out all of the space and all of the all of the sort of reflections and maybe the do-overs and the restarts. If you are a podcast listener and then you go and you listen to like public radio, what a difference that is. Like those beautiful, gorgeous, long shows like On Being or Terry Gross On Air or Fresh Air with Terry Gross. Those shows where it's just, you feel like you're sitting down by their fireplace having tea with them in their homes, right? With podcasts, there's this thing of no spaces, like no cadence, or taking out the way that they speak, like stutters. That's a whole nother topic, but that's not a thing that you want to take out. That's something about a person, right? So over editing is another thing that is a big, huge thing that I see new podcasters make.
So when we started, we had the worst logo that we tried to make homemade. And we're like, oh, good God, this is not good. We were just like, this isn't going to cut it. So we went and we paid someone to do a really nice logo for us. And then we were told that episode covers were really important, but you could make them in Canva. So can you give maybe a little bit of insight to people on the setting up of their podcast cover, like their not the episode, but the logo per se, and then the episode covers and what those really look like and what they need to reflect on their podcast, especially naming too, because I feel like naming's another thing.
Okay, so here's where I'm not an expert. What I do know is keep your podcast cover art simple and where you can easily read what the name is. Now, I will say with naming your podcast, there are different thoughts on that. Some people will say, name it so that it will get traction for SEO, search engine optimization. Name it what it's about. Other people say books and movies aren't labeled that way and people find out about them. So there are just different thoughts on that. And it also depends on how you're going to market. But quick note on podcast titles too, I would avoid putting the name podcast in your title. First of all, podcasting, that word might go away any minute. It's already archaic. Nobody's used an iPod for 15 years. It's old, right? And what is the next technology going to be? We have no idea. So that's the first thing. Second thing is it's redundant to call it
the Entrepreneurs S.O.S. podcast.
Right. Because listen, we know it's a podcast. It's not like Parks and Rec TV show, 60 Minutes TV show. Like that sounds like we're brand new at this, right? And in 10 years, people are going to be like, oh, that's a little embarrassing. No, she didn't do that. That said, you can change any of this at any time. Anytime you want to rebrand, change your name, you can do any of this. And that's a huge thing to avoid pod fade too. If you want to pivot. There are no rules in podcasting. There are none. If you want your show to be 5 minutes next week, and then the following week, 45 minutes with sound design, you get to do that. You can, if you want to do a monologue, then week after, interview the week after. There are no rules. Experiment. How do you know that you want to do just an interview show that's 30 minutes unless you practice and get into this?
Is there any other technical things that you feel like people struggle with when it comes to the podcast? And we covered the mic, we covered the room, we covered the mic technique, we covered interfaces, we covered some auto editing. Anything else that you feel a lot of people are like, I don't really know how to do this, or a question that you get asked a lot?
Yeah, there are, in terms of adding things to your show like equalization and noise reduction and compression, there are really only 3 things. If you've got a great microphone or a good microphone, good mic technique, and you're recording in high definition audio, you're going to only use those things to finesse your final product. Now, what I do in every show is add noise reduction first, just a little bit, because every room has a tone, right? Every room has sound, right? That just will tighten it up. Your computer might turn on, the fan might turn on, you might not know it, something else might kick in, just a little bit of noise reduction. And then from there, you do equalization, which in Hindenburg, it's a drop-down menu that is voice profiler, which is just a conglomerate of broadcast quality style voices. That's all you do is you turn that on. Then underneath that is a compressor. And don't compress the shit out of your shows. You see a lot of broadcasters do this, especially on social media, where they're going to like sound really loud. Everything's going to be like punching you in the face. Let's just finesse stuff, right? But also if that sounds good to you, do it. If I haven't said this yet, use your ears. What I might like, you might not like, and that's just fine. So just those 3 things on every episode and you're set. It is just finessing. Now with the finessing point to one of the biggest audio editing rules is if it sounds like an edit, leave it in or take out a bigger section. And what that just means is if you can tell that it's been edited, that has to stay. Like you can, the best editors, it sounds like there was no editor on the show. You don't ever want to hear anything sound like an edit, whether it's clipping off the end of a breath or the making where you can tell that, oh, they cut that part out to get into this next part.
Sandy and I think have a lot of experience just from our previous jobs in network marketing. We've done a lot of interviews with trainings. It comes a little bit more naturally to us. We have practice, but a lot of people coming into podcasting, they've never done an interview. They've never had this dynamic. What are some tips that you can give that budding entrepreneur who's starting a podcast when they're bringing in interviewers, what they can do? And also, if you have it, is there any way to find guests? Do you have a secret sauce maybe to finding some guests as well?
Okay. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I love the whole process of not only interviewing people, but listening and asking questions. So the first thing is when somebody comes in, before they come and sit down and do an interview with you, I would let them know that this is going to be edited. And so that if they say anything that they want taken out later, that they can do so. That will put them at ease like instantly. And I can't tell you how many times people have come back to me and been like, I said this thing and it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. Can you take that out? Or I changed my mind on this. Can you take that out? And that's just fine. So that will help settle the person right away, is that this is edited. And the other thing too is to let them know before and remind them again when they come is that they can take a break at any time. If they need to go to the bathroom, if they need to let their dog out, if they're just getting flustered, make them feel like they've come into your home. And I literally, when I engineer other people's shows, I get there before the guests do. And I always say all of these things. And I also always say, make yourself at home. And I sincerely mean that. Like, you do you, like, get comfortable. Like, this can be scary. So I try to make them feel like, hey, we're just friends kicking it, right? And the other thing is start recording right when the guest gets there and let them know you're recording. This will help ease you into when you actually start the interview. And it's not the pressure of, okay, we're going to start recording now, or the notification comes up on the screen, now recording. And you're like, oh, okay, do I start? None of that. It's just, hey, we're recording. I'm going to check your levels. Ask them what they had for breakfast and then check their levels. If you're like in Riverside, you can check their mic levels and different things and see their inputs and outputs. And you can go over all of that. But also that little chit chat helps, because then you just naturally say, okay, so blah, blah, blah. And then you ask the first question and you're already recording. Now, second part of that is don't stop recording until the guest has physically left. Some of the best things happen after you stop recording and when the show is over. But the other thing too is when you are asking people questions, also ask them beforehand, is there anything that, if at any point you feel uncomfortable or triggered, please leave and take care of yourself.
I have to say, we have made the mistake of not keeping the recorder on, and we have missed some of the best freaking nuggets from that person. I'm like, damn, I wish we had that. We could have put that in somewhere because it really was like powerful.
Yeah. You're not the first person to tell me that. Yeah. It's a thing because people are like, oh, it's over. And then they relax. Yeah. And another good technique is when you ask somebody a question, have them try to get them to paint a picture of the answer. Say, can you tell me more about that? Or walk me through that? Or what does that look like? Those are good questions to ask people. And then when they're done answering a question, just sit there and don't say anything. It will be uncomfortable the first 20 times, 50 times, 100 times you do this, practice it. What happens there is people will want to fill that silence. And oftentimes they fill it with something that is really special, really vulnerable, really like a unique bit that you would not have gotten if you would have been like, cool, awesome. And good job on not responding.
We're quick. Like, we're going to just be students and be quiet.
Plus, That was so good. You guys nailed it. Like, we're done here.
Yeah,
But don't
this
stop
has been
reading.
amazing.
Yeah.
So many little nuggets that I feel like we as beginner podcasters just picked up. That silence piece, the keep recording. I know that Sandy and I have had conversations about listening to our podcast. We're like, oh, we got to shut it down. We got to zip our lips when people are talking. And sometimes you get excited and you make those mistakes. But I think it is really active listening that becomes a big part of podcasting. Is we're so used to having conversations where we interject, and it's like just shutting it down and saying, listen.
Monique had said when we started this podcast that she'd been wanting to do a podcast for a while and was thinking about it. I honestly had never thought about doing a podcast, but once I did it, I felt like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love this. And I feel like from our first podcast to we launched 17 today, they really are getting, for the most part, progressively better. And we're learning along the way. And that's why pod fade, that there's actually a word for it. I find that interesting. It doesn't surprise me, but I find it interesting. But is there an opposite? Because I think Monique and I are in it for the long haul because we're both really enjoying it.
I love that. Is there an opposite? Let's come up with something.
We need a word, because I get excited about the idea of just talking to people. I feel like it's such a great medium, and there is something about putting this stupid microphone in front of your face that makes you feel like, what's his name? What's the guy? Oh God, what is his name? He's got the big curly hair.
Mark Maron?
No.
Stern.
Howard Stern. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, all of a sudden, Howard Stern, no limitations. And that's how it feels. If I put the microphone in front of my face and do a live, the dynamic is completely different than if I don't have a microphone.
Totally.
So weird. So even if you're not going to do a podcast and you're doing video, I suggest getting the mic. Just my personal experience has been get the mic. But this has been such a fun adventure. And I can't wait to see. I would love to be syndicated. I'd love to have advertisers. Like, I have big dreams.
I love this. And to that point, into Podfade, I think one of the reasons people give up too is because they think, I have a podcast and where are my listeners? And this is so much work. And Alex Hormozy's podcast did not get popular for 5 years. 5 years. And look at him now. So this is the long game. Everybody cares about mile 1 in a marathon and then the finish line. What about the whole, was it 26 miles?
After the middle is what he said.
Yes. I love that. And that is so true. So fall in love with the process, not the end goal. Absolutely. You guys are killing it.
And for me too, I think, and this is just my personality, there's so much of the instant gratification out there. And I feel like once you do something, as you get better, it's going to pay off eventually. It's not just about being out there and being syndicated and making money with it, but I really enjoy and have a passion, and it's lit a fire in me. Monique and I are very real, and we bring up topics that are maybe not as popular, and we put our voices out there to maybe, like you said, cutting through the bullshit, right? There's so much bullshit out there in every topic, and we like to do that. And I think it's good to be heard and to give not just advice, but our own personal experiences. That's why we have podcasts that we banter back and forth or share our experiences. And then we have podcasts with guests like you. So I like what you said, 5 minutes, 45 minutes, guest, no guest, just mixing it up.
And we always go long because we just love this. And we're always like, it went long, but that's okay because it's our podcast and we can do whatever we want.
Absolutely. I can relate. When I had my podcast, I was a drinker then. I was a big drinker. And so we would drink, and some of my shows would be an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it'd be like, oh my God, should we stop recording?
Oh my God. I think we should do a wine episode, Sandy. I think we should be like, the ladies
not at 8 a.m.
Some wine.
Oh my God.
We'll have 6 people on. We're all just going to get loaded while we're talking. We'll just bring up whatever topics. It would about entrepreneurship. It would probably be like one of our best received episodes. We look at our downloads and we get excited if we have 10 people. We're like, whoa, we got 10 downloads. We're enjoying the process. We're just like, who did we bless today? Both of us have had people come back to us people we know, people we don't know. And they're like, you guys are doing such a great job with this. I feel like it's relatable. It's real. You're in the trenches. You're bringing on good guests. You guys are having fun with it. And it's been great feedback. So we were excited when we first met you in that Zoom we were all on. And we both literally were in the Zoom like, we want her as a guest. There's no question. Like we already had plotted that like months before. We're like, oh, we got to ask her. We want her on because you're just so knowledgeable. And there is just so much bullshit that is being spewed out in influencer land. And I, for one, am just fed up with influencer land. Like I'm over it. I'm so over it. The thousands of dollars that people are spending to learn not what they need to learn when they can do it for a whole lot less with people who actually know what the hell they're talking about.
Yes, I agree.
Sandy, do you have anything to add? Are you able to speak? I know you've had a mower issue today.
Yeah, I've had some background. Beck, this was phenomenal. I got so much out of this, so many little tidbits and nuggets and mistakes that we did make initially and that we're still making, and so much to learn from and improve from. So just even for selfish reasons, I'm super grateful to have had you on today. I'm sure our audience has gotten a ton of value as well. So thank you so much.
And by the way, everybody, all of her information will be in the show notes, her website, her handles. You can watch her on Instagram and TikTok. She drops some really good nuggets on there. If she has a great lead magnet that you guys can check out that has a PDF of all the things you don't want to do. I definitely think you should go check her website and her TikTok out because she's really great at what she does.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. 10 mistakes podcasters are making. It's a video and it's 10 minutes, but it's packed. It's like a little mini training. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys asked really great questions. So thank you.